linger afterwards. In fact, some studies have shown, I actually came across an article put out by Lancet that did a sort of overview of over 3,000 studies on the effect of quarantine, and some studies, not all of them, but a few actually identified lingering effects as much as 3 years later. So being separated, being apart from friends, from community, being confined to one's home is a highly stressful event, and we may not be really that aware of it. So therefore, I want to talk about what those stressors are and how can we impact and ameliorate them, how can we impact upon them at this juncture, so God willing, when soon we'll be able to resume our regular lives and leave our homes and be part of the community again, that it won't have as much of a detrimental effect or as lasting a detrimental effect. So there are basically 3 areas that are identified as having this kind of corrosive impact on people when they're quarantined or when they're forcibly confined. One of them, fairly obviously, is the fear of the disease. And the other 2 is understimulation, lack of stimulation, lack of exposure to novel and different circumstances, and then the seclusion from others, the disconnect from family, friends, and important people in our lives. So I'm going to address each one and what we can do to minimize its effects. Let's start with the fear of the disease. Now, fear or anxiety, which is more what we're talking about, is tricky, because let's just give an example. Suppose somebody has an addiction. Suppose somebody is a smoker or has an addiction to a drug or to gambling or something like that. The person can go cold turkey. The person can just stop. I mean, that's not so simple. I'm saying it doesn't require some intervention and assistance, but the goal is pretty clear cut. If someone's a smoker, the goal will be not to smoke. If somebody's a gambler, the goal would be not to gamble. If somebody's a drinker, the goal would be not to drink. And you can live a very rich life without smoking, drinking, and gambling. The problem with let's take another kind of addictions, is that you really can't go cold turkey. You have to achieve sort of a happy medium. Again, I'm encouraging everybody to please mute their phones at this point. So for example, if somebody has an eating problem, they overeat, they're addicted to food, well, you can't do without food. If somebody has a shopping issue or spending money, I mean, you can't go through life and not spend money. So you have to sort of find a happy medium. It's a similar situation with anxiety. You can't get rid of anxiety. Anxiety is necessary. And in fact, it is because of anxiety that we are all now largely taking precautionary measures, and we are hopefully making a dent in stopping the spread of this dreaded disease. So we need an element, we need a sort of modicum of anxiety. If we have too much or too little, that's not helpful. If we have too little anxiety, it means we're sort of cavalier and not caring and sort of offhanded about it. And then we're going to take risks that can do us some harm, as we've seen unfortunately happening in our community. If you have too much anxiety, then you can become crippled by the excessive anxiety. It can cause you a lot of emotional harm, even physical harm, because anxiety does sort of mix with our sort of more traditional medical conditions. People who are highly anxious tend to get gastrointestinal distress, skin rashes, breathing problems, etc. And it's also that we're not thinking straight. So our goal is to achieve that middle level of anxiety. We should be concerned, we should be distressed, but not so distressed that we're engaging in behaviors that are detrimental or not thinking straight. In essence, maybe one way of sort of putting it is that we should have control over our anxiety, that our anxiety, we should be the masters of anxiety. We should experience it, but use it constructively, as most of us are at this point, in terms of curtailing or severely limiting our contact outside, taking necessary hygienic precautions, etc. Now, how do we reach that point? How do we reach that sort of middle level of anxiety? So first of all, you have to be informed and properly informed. And this is a challenge today. In recent years, the method and manner in which we acquire information or learn about news or keep current is very different than it had been not so long ago. With the advent of the internet and the proliferation of social media, we are now sort of assaulted, if you will, bombarded with a plethora of information news sources, some of which, by their own admission, are biased. Others may not admit that they're biased, but many of them are. And not all of them are necessarily accurate. Since there is such a fierce competition for our attention and focus, then there is an even greater tendency today for sensational-like headlines, quote unquote, breaking news of information that has probably been verified. So we have to learn, and maybe that'll be one of the silver linings of this crisis, is we have to learn how to process this information, how to filter this information that we're being assaulted with, and also how to manage it. Part of the problem is not only the type of information, but even the sheer volume that we can be. We can go on our phones, we can go on the internet, and we can be so drowned in information that even if it were all accurate and even if it were all tempered, it still would create a feat of anxiety because of the sheer volume of information that we're being bombarded with. So we have to be informed, and we have to first of all be selective in terms of what sites we get our information from, and we may have to learn to ignore many of them, no matter how compelling the headline may be, or even identify what sites are reliable in terms of information, or what will at least present what might be tentative information as exactly that, which is tentative. The same thing goes with medical sites. We have to understand medically what's going on, and we have to understand what's happening and what measures and precautions we have to take, but it has to come from reliable sources. There's a long list of misinformation about this disease that has been disseminated, and again, because it's done with such an abundance, with such a tidal wave of information, not only engenders a lot of anxiety, but can engender a lot of misconceptions as well. So this is part of what we have to do in order to be able to contain the anxiety to a proper level. Okay, we also have to know how to achieve a proper level of hope, because hope is very important. Optimism and hope has been associated with quicker curing from illness, from better outcomes in general, and from a better lifestyle, greater longevity, etc. But it has to be, again, realistic optimism. And unrealistic optimism, hopefulness when it's unwarranted, can sometimes be more harmful than I wouldn't say pessimism necessarily, but the lack of optimism. So in terms of what's happening here and what does the future hold, first of all, to a large extent, it's ambiguous. We really don't know. We don't know the trajectory this illness is going to take, and we don't know how long it'll be there and how long it'll be impinging upon our lives. So there is an element of ambiguity, and ambiguity itself engenders anxiety. So sometimes people who have found out tragic news will tell you that just the certainty that they have now, even though the news that they have is a negative one, is easier for them to handle than the uncertainty while they were waiting, let's say, for test results or something like that. So there is an element of uncertainty, but I think we can safely say that historically most pandemics, all pandemics, as far as I know, had a beginning, middle, and end. That we can, I think, safely assume that there will be a resolution, that we will reach a point where where either disease will be conquered or this pandemic will pass and will be better armed and fortified to prevent its recurrence. How long that will take and at what cost, we don't know. But if the anxiety scale is going very high and becoming debilitating, then it may pay for us to remind ourselves of that. It's also important to know that even while we're in the midst of a crisis, that our response to the crises also tend to fluctuate, that they tend to fluctuate between greatly intense anxiety, more calm, etc. And there is this fluctuation. Our body cannot stay in a heightened state of alert in a very long time. So therefore, there is an element of this kind of fluctuation. Now, I'll talk a little bit later about people who may be at high risk for excessive anxiety or too little anxiety for that matter. Let me talk a little bit about the seclusion and disconnection. In other words, that most of us now are confined to varying degrees to our home. And I think it's a safe bet to say that almost all of us are not going to shul and are not attending weddings, and our children are not going to school. So our social network has been very much taken away from us, has been sort of been prevented from having the kind of social connection and communal connection that we often like. There's many years ago, psychologists decided that we've been spending many years studying depression. Let's study happiness. And they did this about 20 years ago now. We did this huge international study, and they want to know what makes people happy. They couldn't call it happiness because it doesn't sound scientific, so they called it subjective well-being, which is happiness. And they came up with three things that has been pretty consistently associated with happiness. And they're often referred to as the three F's. Now, if this was a little easier to have an interaction, I'd like to try to guess, but most of you are trying to try to guess it, and most of you probably are getting 2 out of 3. But the three F's are friends, family, and then the third one, which is the interesting one, is faith. Now, how do you measure faith? You can't go into someone's heart and see how much they believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but they measured faith by by membership in a house of worship. So by membership in a shul, a church or a mosque, so is associated with that. So that if you have a close coterie of friends, if you have close family ties, and you have a communal adherence, communal connection, you're a happy person. It's not money, it's not food, it's these three things. And of course, then as we used to say in yeshiva, what's the Sada Shava B'neihem? What is the common denominator? And of course, if you forget, common denominator is connections. So being connected and being with people is very important. And it's interesting because we very often think of, like, if we were to talk about basic needs, we would talk about basic needs as being, food, shelter, safety, which they are, but stimulation, using our brain, seeing different things, being exposed to novelty, and having relationships with others are also basic needs. In fact, even in studies in the animal kingdom, animals will go to great lengths, sometimes even great risks, in order to feel connected to other animals or to have opportunities for stimulation. So we see that these are very important. So what we have to do to minimize the harm of the kind of seclusion that we're going through right now is to maximize opportunities within the limits that we can for this type of stimulation and for this type of connection. And thank God, we do have the internet. I mean, I really think we can look at the advent of the internet of Hashem providing us with the refuah before the makkah, because imagine how much harder, and that might have even skewed some of those results that I alluded to earlier, how much harder this all would be if we didn't have the opportunity to see each other and connect to each other the way we can today. So a few pointers, and many of these have been emphasized already, so I apologize if I'm bringing cold to Newcastle. But first of all, preserve your schedule and preserve even the way you dress. Get up at the same time you get up, usually. Do your schedule, even though you're not davening in minyan, try to daven at the time that you would routinely daven. Get dressed. If it's a work day, wear your work clothing, whatever that might be. That makes a very big difference how you dress. It does affect your attitude. And put in a day's work as much as you can. If you don't have, or it's not possible to work from home, or let's say whether you're busy with childcare because the children are home, but keep yourself busy and feel productive. And expose yourself to the routine amount of stimulation that you would be exposed to, whether it's work challenges, information, news, whatever it might be. Don't, try to maintain that same level of stimulation. It's a basic need. We need to have that kind of information. And try to be productive. Try to replicate your level of productivity as you go through your week, and connect with other people. Have chats, schedule. And in fact, what I'm encouraging parents to do is the night before, when the kids are going to sleep, and of course nowadays you're ready to just shoot yourself at that point, but sit down and type up a schedule for the next day. When there'll be schooling, there can be periods of the day for children when there is unstructured recreational play, but there should be a full day. And with activities can be recreational ones also. We need to sort of lift. So they can be fun games, to have those connections and to achieve those connections with the very medium that we're using right now, which is really, historically almost unprecedented in terms of our capacity. In fact, the research again shows that people who, while in the quarantine, participated in quote unquote support groups actually fared better when they got out than those who didn't. So maybe we don't need formal support groups. But if you are in touch with family members and friends on a routine basis, and just talking and sharing about your experiences, not necessarily looking to solve problems, you're going to feel more connected. And I think we can very safely say it's less likely that you're going to have some of that detrimental effects, or the experience of being confined is going to be as detrimental. Now, there are certain people who are more at risk to have a negative effect, a negative response to the confinement that we're experiencing. Probably one of the most common questions that we're getting asked at Ohel is regarding people with pre-existing either conditions or situations. So let me enumerate the two and the difference, okay? The pre-existing conditions most commonly are those who have a propensity to anxiety or to obsessive compulsive disorder, or have a pre-existing anxiety disorder or an actual obsessive compulsive disorder. These are conditions that we in mental health can treat very well. We have a fairly high success rate, so they're very treatable conditions. But very often treatment doesn't mean getting rid of it, but just getting mastery over it. And then a stressful situation like this, and where there's an element of worry, and when there is instructions for safety and to prevent the spread of germs, can bring it out or can exacerbate already existing conditions. So that's one group of pre-existings that I'm going to address in a minute. And then the other one has to do with relationships. And if there is certain types of friction or differences at home that may not reach a feverish pitch because everybody's busy, or maybe you may be looking at it as something, well, we'll solve when we get a chance. Now being cooped up together in the home can become really more difficult. I'm specifically referring to sibling relationships, whereas sibling rivalry is a very normal state and actually desirable. Children learn a lot through resolving sibling rivalry. Sometimes it can be pretty intense. And or other times there's a particular child who's being scapegoated as teens go through, which is ameliorated by his being in school all day with his friends, and friends are very important to teens, but now maybe might be, again, being cooped up in the home and less opportunity to interface with his friends might become less tolerable and or maybe become unbearable. Now, here's an important point. Again, I encourage everybody to please mute their phones. Background noise can be disturbing sometimes. When we're in as I said, all these issues are very treatable. We're not talking about something that in the mental health profession we can't effectively address. However, is it now the time to do it? We're in a crisis mode. And more so than not nowadays, we're actually trying to manage some of these situations and not necessarily fix them, because it's very hard to fix them when you're already in a stress state or already when you're sort of emotionally compromised. So again, we can try, but for the most part, I think we're looking much more nowadays to contain these issues, and then we'll address them when life gets back to normal. That might mean that somebody with anxiety, if the routine type of stress inoculation techniques are not working, so maybe that person will go on medication at this point, and not, even though that wouldn't have been warranted otherwise, but again, we don't have the luxury right now of engaging in intensive, or not intensive, but even routine type of treatment. Maybe it means keeping the two siblings apart. Maybe it means having the child who's being picked on and bullied stay in with you in your room or something like that. One of the questions we're getting is children with nightmares. Now, typically children with nightmares, we don't encourage they're staying in the parents' bedroom. That just is going to be a very hard habit to break. However, again, we're in a crisis situation, and if you decide that that's the best way to manage a child's nightmares, what we're telling them is say to the child, when this coronavirus is over, you're going back to your room, so they know, look, right from the start that this isn't the case. But these are types of situations that can get exacerbated. And I will also mention, and I think it's worth noting, that if there are marital issues, and I'm not talking about necessarily severe marital discord that might be as a resultant divorce, although some of you may be aware that in the Wuhan province, there's unprecedented levels of divorce at this point. But there might be marital problems that are livable or fixable, that don't necessarily so impede on your life, but when both of you are working full time and as busy as you might be, and now spending the whole day together, they can come out. We see that sometimes with retirement, when a couple retires and suddenly they spend the whole day together, issues that had previously not been terribly disturbing can come to the forefront. Or you could have a very good marriage, but you could have very different parenting styles or type, and there's nothing wrong with parents having some differences, but maybe significantly enough differences that it interferes with your effective parenting, which again, when dad worked from 9 to 9 and mom worked from 9 to 8, mom basically parented from 8 to 9, it didn't necessarily come to the forefront, but now might come to the forefront. Again, we're not encouraging real treatment. We're encouraging right now to manage it, park it. Maybe if there's parenting differences, just reach some sort of compromise or let one side have their way, with the understanding that when things get back to normal, we're going to address it. And maybe this will actually bring out some issues that once life gets to normal, we can address. And that might be one of the silver linings of this issue. Let me mention a few more other people that, again, we have to be alerted to, that'll be more profoundly affected by the seclusion that we're going through now. Obviously, lonely people, older singles, elderly, widowed people. One of the people that I spoke to is a young man who's lives from out of town, lives in this city and going to college, and he's a Baal Tshuva, and he can't really go back to his family for Pesach, and people don't want to host him under this current circumstances. So there are people that are facing painful loneliness, and we have to try to assist them as best we can without obviously compromising our own health. There are people that are expecting big milestones. Young children having bar mitzvahs, people having weddings, seniors in college who are expecting to graduate. And let's not forget the YU basketball team that was on the brink of some really remarkable success, unprecedented for the school, that now again had to be curtailed because of this crisis. And that's painful. I have a grandson who's supposed to have a bar mitzvah on Shabbos HaGadol, and he's spending a year getting ready. And he's not going to have it. It looks very unlikely that he's going to have it. So, of course, we can tell him that he'll have a party later on, but obviously it's not the same. And these are, and we should not try to make it good for them. There's no way to make it good. We're doing a much better service to that population to commiserate with them. That it really is nothing we can do about it. We feel terrible about it. But to commiserate with them, a wedding is the greatest day of your life, and people are getting married, in their dining room with two Eidim and the Masada Kedushin. It is painful, and I think that has to be acknowledged. There's financial worry, which I don't think has really hit us yet, but unless things turn around very quickly, and people are going to be out of work. There are people between jobs right now who may have left a job with the full anticipation in a strong economy of getting a better job, and now have suddenly had the rug pulled out from under them. There are fears of anti-Semitism, and already I understand in some circles and in some places it already has come out. Again, they're blaming the Jews for this, and there's a long history of that. And we just came out of a period where there was a spate and a dramatic increase in anti-Semitism. So there's a lot of worry about that. And then there's also those people who may have been responsible for someone else catching the virus, if it's fairly evident, and the guilt that they feel because of the harm that they have caused others. Let me mention just a few more points that I think worth mentioning, that we can open it up to questions. There are many ways to cope, and I want to share some of them that might be, and some of them that might be surprising. First of all, talk about it. And talking about it doesn't mean that the recipient or the audience has to come up with solutions. As I said, I think I alluded to this earlier, just sharing and just talking about the stress and the pressure is a useful way of coping. Get out as much as you can without taking chances. Take walks, go to relatively unpopulated places, get some fresh air, go to your backyard if you have one, shoot a ball, do things, and get out as much as you can. And as long as I mentioned ball playing, many of us who rely on exercise to varying degrees and exercise not only to keep our weight down, and by the way, weight gain is an issue when you're confined to the home, but also, I don't have to tell you that exercise is a very significant form of stress inoculation. And obviously we can't go to the gym and we can't necessarily play ball with large groups anymore, but try to take walks, try to get on the treadmill, try to do as much as you can to have the benefits of exercise that you may not have had before. Gratitude. There's a remarkable body of literature on the healthy effects of being grateful. Interestingly enough, people who openly express, not just think it in passing, but openly express gratitude have recovered better from illness, or have less depression, anxiety, sleep better, are healthier. In fact, there's more dopamine and serotonin secreted in the central nervous system of people who express gratitude. So it is a natural antidepressant and tranquilizer. And we have to look for things to be grateful for. And I think as we are cooped up in the house with our spouses, maybe we should be grateful we have them. And as we're confined to our homes, we maybe have to be grateful that we have such comfortable homes to live in, and that we should be grateful for the internet. We should be grateful for the efforts of the community, which have been exemplary, and what to make this as tolerable as possible. There's a method called meaning making, which means when you're in a stressful situation, try to find something positive about it. That doesn't mean that the situation is positive. Don't deny the pain and hardship that's present, but try to mine or cull from the situation lessons you can learn, growth that you can accrue from this experience. Now, it's a very personal thing. I'm not going to tell you what you should, what conclusion you should reach. It's one that we all have to do personally. But as we go through this, think about how, when we come out of it, how we're going to be different people, how we're going to relate to our shul now that we don't have it. Sometimes you have to be away from something to appreciate what we have. So let's think, and that should be part of the work that we do, is to gain and grow from it. It takes away some of the seeming senselessness of it, and takes away some of the pain of what we're going through. And let me mention one more thing, which again should come as no surprise to us, but there's a body of literature on this, which is what we call the psychospiritual. The ability to engage in spirituality. Spirituality takes us away from the immediate surroundings and elevates us beyond that, to see more to it, to see that there is a greater purpose in life, a greater meaning, a greater being that's moving the chess pieces around, and that helps. And there's literature to say it. Again, I'm being a psychologist, that we have a rabbi, you don't need a second one, but there's a body of literature to show that makes a very big difference in stressful situations. Again, let's hope and pray that everybody will be well. I just want to mention, since I'm here representing Ohel, that it's very hard to pinpoint everybody's unique circumstances and needs, and some people have some fairly distinct challenges going on right now. We have constructed a dedicated email address for people who may need the assistance of our trauma team. We are offering free remote and confidential trauma intervention. Anybody, or if people just have questions, the email address is copingwithcovid19 at ohelfamily.org. That's copingwithcovid19 at ohelfamily.org. If you forgot that, Yitzi is here, and he'll be happy to share it with you as well. The rabbi, I'm sure, has access to this as well, and we'll be more than happy. Someone from the trauma team will be in touch with you in a short while, and possibly, and if we can, schedule a remote appointment to offer this kind of assistance. I think at this point, what we'll do is we'll open up to questions, or if anybody has some input of something they want to share in a manner or fashion in which they coped, which I haven't addressed, please do share it. That the best process to do this would be for you to unmute your phone when you ask the question, then remute it. In fact, while we're doing this, I'm going to be muting my phone, so this way we minimize background noise.
So we're gonna see how many people have questions, and we'll start it just in a open fashion. And if it get too many people out there, then I'll give you my number, which you can text me, and then I'll call on you. So if you have a question right now, unmute yourself, and just if you want to say your name, you can, and go ahead.
Someone just raised their hand, so I said that kind of coming. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, okay. My question is about how to talk to children to explain the drastic change in their lives where they're transitioning to virtual homeschool, in addition to keeping their schedules, keeping them occupied and safe emotionally, and keeping them challenged.
Okay, thank you for an easy question that I can answer probably in 90 seconds, right? That's a talk unto itself. So I'll address it fairly quickly, but if you want a little bit more comprehensive addressing of that, you can go on the Ohel website. There are two webinars that I gave. One was actually from back when we were emphasizing more hygiene, but the more recent one, which was addressed really to the Westchester community, addresses a little bit more exhaustively, but I'll just very quickly give you the highlights of that issue. The younger the child, the less explanation you need. Let's say if you have preschool age children, they're very used to adults taking them into various places and making them do things that make no sense to them. We take them to doctors and stick needles in their arms. I'm sure they think that's absolutely nuts. But that's their part of their world. So we don't have to offer them too much explanation why we're doing this. This is what we're doing. And again, very important with children in general is that you reach your own consensus, you reach your own conclusion, and then you talk to the child. Scared children will be responsive as much to your voice tone and body language and the volume of what you say as they are to your particular words. So that's an important consideration. But again, younger children, even school-age children, are still, for the most part, obedient, and you'll tell them this is what we're doing. Now, of course, from school age on, from first grade on, we do offer them an explanation because they understand the ways of the world. And one more thing they understand at that point is the concept of frequency and rarity, which the preschool age child does not understand. But they know that diseases can be contagious, and they understand that we're in a crisis situation, and we can offer them an explanation. School age children tend to ask a lot of factual questions, and that's very normal, and we answer them as best we can. Teenagers don't really need an explanation. I think they understand on their own. Teens can be a little bit more unconventional and might challenge some of the suggestions we're making, but again, they do understand. And by the way, teens will respond very favorably to some of the idealistic purpose. So even if they say to us, well, this is, young people are recovering, what's the risk to me to say to them that we want to protect those who are more medically vulnerable and the elderly is something that would resonate well with them. If you have a more specific question about talking to your children, if your children's giving you a particularly difficult time, and by the way, there are some children, again, for whom it'll be more difficult. For a child with ADHD, it's very hard to get them to exercise the restraint to engage in hygienic practices, and being confined to the house is all the more difficult. So there are some special circumstances, just like with adults, as there are with children. But I would then urge you to contact me again through Coping with COVID-19 at ohelfamily.org, and we can address it more specifically to the issues to your children. I hope that answered your question.
We also have a question. I have a question to address. I think that when people are in close quarters, one of the it raises tension levels, and I think you address this a little bit, and you talked that it's one of the stressors. I'm wondering, what do you, in your estimation, is sort of the most effective or an effective way to try to proactively try to keep tension levels down in a home, rather than reacting, figuring out a way how to deal with it after it happens?
So obviously with children, keep them busy. Keep them active, keep them busy. It'll distract them from some of the scapegoating that goes on when there's frustration, and they take it out on siblings. And as I said earlier, if one child is is the A's Lazazel, then try to keep that child away from it. From the other children, that you sort of manage it. I think also there has to be, and I sort of alluded to this earlier, but I think there also has to be a recognition that we're in a crisis situation. Nerves are frayed, old, scars will come up more, and it might pay if there is friction that's evolving, to have a sort of mutual understanding that this is important. We're not minimizing its importance, and that as soon as things get back to normal, we're going to try to address it more either professionally, or we can maybe address it ourselves. But in the midst of a crisis is not always the best time to kind of heal old wounds, because everybody's nerves are frayed, and there's too many other things going on to address that. So I do think that's, and something, even in good relationships and even wholesome relationships, they sometimes have to be apart from one another. We can't be on top of each other. That's going to breed tension. And sometimes we have to just make sure, even in the more confined quarters of our homes, that we find time to engage in separate activities or interact with our own separate contacts, friends, families, and not be constantly on top of each other. That can sometimes, in and of itself, breed tension.
You mentioned before that many people have not yet necessarily come to terms with whatever financial consequences might be in the future. For those who have, for those who are currently worried about that, for that the businesses or are currently problematic, or that they are worried that they will be, do you have any advice as to how to deal with that?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and it's a real concern. That's why I think we need to face this. We need to brace ourselves, because I think it is going to be a challenge. I think the best thing that we can have in mind, and I do believe it's legitimate to say that, is that finances are also cyclical. That there are, the 7 fat years and 7 lean years. And I think we can, I think it's not being unrealistically optimistic to assume there will be a point that we will emerge from the financial doldrums that are being engendered. How long, I don't know. And we are, even in hard times, we're an affluent and a generous community. And sometimes you have to, swallow your pride and ask for help. And there's nothing wrong with that. One of the hardest things to do for people who have significant setbacks is to go from being the benefactor to the beneficiary. But that's life. Sometimes you're the giver and sometimes you're the taker. So it's real. It is real. And, we can't, I remember when I used to do substance abuse work, some of the drug abusers used to say to me that reality is the people who can't handle drugs. It's a reality. And it is a legitimately stressful reality. We'll tell ourselves things, and we'll use some of those ideas to make it less stressful. But it's a real stressor. It is a definite real stressor, and one that we have to brace ourselves for, especially those in fixed incomes, those who are retired, etc. It's real. There's no way to just sort of do away with it.
What is in a situation where you may have a child that's at risk? I've gotten some questions, similar to you've thought like in the Holocaust, but if it's a teenager mind or a young adult mind, saying, how can God do this to us? A week ago, we were so comfortable. This week, we, and a young adult that's at an impressionable age, right now they see that we're not going to shul. As much as we try the Zoom and all the programming, the basics of our faith have been taken away, and you try to explain to this child that has a hard time believing to begin with, and all these different questions start coming up. What would be your recommendation to have that conversation, to relate to them, and what would be the best way to handle that situation?
Okay, so there's a much better person here online to answer God questions than me, so I'm not going to address those. But let me talk to you about how children look at this at different ages, and that's, I think, might help. Preschool age children are not busy with God. God is just, looks, whoever happens to be the rabbinic figure in their community, that's what God looks like. So if you live in a Hasidic community, God has pious and Streimel, and in the modern Orthodox community, he has a Kippas Rugan, Blue Tzitzis. They're not really dealing with God. And the elementary school age child also is not busy trying to figure God out. They do what they're told. It's not generally their nature to try to understand these issues. It's when you get to the adolescent that they're trying to figure God out, and it's at that age where the tzaddik rala rosha tovla, why bad things happen to good people, why does God, who loves us and cares for us, or is supposed to reward us for our good behavior, is inflicting pain and hardship upon us, is where this comes to the foreground, and they're much more by nature challenging. That's the negative side. The benefit is, because as we know, for the most part, we can speculate, but many of these questions are unanswerable. I sometimes find myself quoting the Kutzker Rebbe, who said, "I can never believe in a God I could understand." We know these are unanswerable questions. There's the famous line from Samson of Paul Hirsch, as he was once comparing Christianity and Judaism. And he said Christianity was a religion created by man to explain God. Judaism is a religion created by God to explain man. That's not our, we can't get that. But a teenager can understand that there are unanswerable questions. The younger child wants answers, wants specific answers. The teenager can tolerate the idea that God, by definition, has to be mysterious, or he wouldn't be God. If we could figure him out, then he wouldn't be God. So we can take that stand. Now, there are those who need a soapbox. There are kids who, as you indicated, maybe in the throes of a rebellion, and they're going to take advantage of any opportunity, to challenge us. And so there's no better opportunity than this, in terms of, and those kids, there's no point getting into a theological argument with them, because they're just looking to give us more gray hairs, or as my wife likes to say, she says her scheitel's turning gray. They're just looking to give us a hard time. And we don't get into debates with them. We tell them these are very good questions. Moshe asked the same question. He couldn't get an answer. So I don't think, if the child is truly struggling with it, then we can discuss it with them and help them understand that these are largely unanswered questions. If they're looking just to, give us more agina, then we don't get into a whole debate with them. And I think many of us are looking, certainly you see things to see how we can, because our style is to look inward. Our style is to see how we can make ourselves better, not because our behavior necessarily caused this hardship. That's not something I think we can speculate about, but that's just our traditional way of responding, which is we try to make ourselves better. I hope that's okay, Rabbi. I didn't want to be mazik gvul, and if you want to add to that, welcome it.
I have nothing to add at this point. I think from a mental health perspective, I don't have much to add. To the extent that it is a theological question, that's on a case-by-case basis. Right. Anybody else would like to ask a question?
I'll keep going if nobody else has any.
Okay, Rabbi Schiffman.
I had a question.
Can you speak a moment, perhaps? Doron, you have something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Doron, go for it. I'll save mine.
I'm just curious about any studies that have been done in terms of this type of seclusion when it comes to longer term potential seclusions. In other words, are the studies that you mentioned at the beginning, are they shorter term? Like, what are some of the other studies that have been done?
So for the most part, the longer the seclusion, the more corrosive the effect. There is some suggest like a sort of curvilinear effect while you're in that seclusion. In other words, that the beginning is not so bad. It gets more, it increases, the tension increases. And then if it is fairly prolonged, we acclimate to it. In fact, one of the risks that I think could happen is that we could acclimate too much. It's interesting that some of the data suggests that even as a person comes out of, especially a coerced seclusion of a fairly lengthy period of time, that they don't just plunge right back into society, that they continue to practice a sort of self-quarantine even afterwards. Because what happens is when we're in a situation for a fairly long time, it becomes our identity. In a fairly quick period of time, and they could look regular and even thin, but they look in the mirror and they see a fat person. Because our identity changes and our mind changes much slower than reality. So there is, the more prolonged it can make a difference. And I think one of the concerns I have is that when this is over, how easily we will transition back into our community and interactions. One of the things that I think it warrants, and I know we're maybe looking ahead of ourselves a bit, but I think when that day comes, and I hope it comes soon, there should be some commemorative events. There should be some celebration. Should be some acknowledgement of the hardship and of our transition back into life, because it is hard to make that transition.
If
Can
I
I-
could just one follow up, I'm sorry. Yeah. Can I just do one quick follow up? It's interesting. I feel like up until a few weeks ago, we were all concerned that our kids were spending too much time online. And now it seems like we think that it's such a great thing that they're online. I'm just curious if you had any thoughts about also like the fact that like this has kind of pushed people even further online, and that after the fact, getting people to not be as much into their devices, into their online forum, etc., will be even harder.
So I just want to, I think that the bottom line is, and with these concerns is, and this is what I tell the kids when I give these talks to children or work with them on it, is that, are you in control of the device, or is the device in control of you? I mean, is it dictating how long you're on and what you're doing, or are you using it to your benefit? If we look at it from that perspective, the increased reliance on it right now during this crisis fits naturally, because we're in a crisis, so we needed more. So we're going to rely on it more now. We're going to be on it longer, but we're doing it because we choose to, and we're making that conscious, deliberate decision. It's not controlling us. So I think it fits actually in a way neatly, that we can be using, or we can be grateful that we have it. When summer comes and we can go outside and play ball instead, or interact with others, we're going to then use it less because we're in control of it. It's not in control of us. And it might be a good idea to remind them of that even though we're using it more now because it's warranted, but that doesn't mean that we're surrendering to the machine. Okay.
I had a question. I mean, it's kind of twofold. It's the Pesach question. One is the whole norm of how we prepare for Pesach is all messed up, because now there's like this fear that there's not enough food out there, and you're sitting there and fighting people, getting on lines to get into supermarkets. It brings a sense of depression in some way, because this is so out of normal. Like, you go in, we're used, a lot of people go, oh, we'll go to 100 supermarkets, get the best deal. Now we're just worrying about being able to get food because there aren't enough people. Plus the whole schedule of trying to get ready for Pesach, even though we're in the house, it feels like there's a lot of depression not to jump into it, especially knowing that you can't have guests and we don't know where we're going to be in a few weeks. Thank you.
So your question is an answer. Yes, these are stresses and excellent points. You know, we're not going to have, I mean, Pesach is so associated with family gatherings, and I'm hearing now medical experts saying grandchildren should not be around grandparents because children can be carriers without obvious symptoms. So we're going to have much more sort of isolation on the holiday that's so associated with families getting together. And even though we are in the home, we're already, cleaning for Pesach is stressful, and now stress upon stress. The mathematics of anxiety and stress is that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4. 2 + 2 = 8. Or my mother, Ohel Shalom, who was a Holocaust survivor with a treasure trove of Yiddish sayings. One of them was that when a poor man has a hernia, there's a pimple on it. When we're already something's wrong, everything else hurts more. So yes, Pesach's going to be very challenging. But again, there are things we can do. We can maybe now be more appreciative of the family we have by having Pesach, unfortunately, more apart. And we'll make the best of it. That's what we're going to do. We're gonna make it as joyous and meaningful a Pesach as possible. I'm having associations, again, I can share personally as this happens, is that I remember my father, Olav Shalom, describing his first year in America in 1937, how he got a job as a mashgiach on a Chalav Yisrael farm, and he brought up his stuff with him, and he had a seder in a barnyard alone. It's a depressing thought, but it's going to be a reality. It might be a reality this year for a lot of people. And we're going to make it as meaningful and beautiful as we can under the circumstances. But you're right. I think your question is a very good statement about another aspect of stress that I hadn't addressed sufficiently. And I think something that's very much on everybody's mind. I will add one more thing: another big uncertainty is the summer. Will there be sleepaway camp? Will there be day camp? And again, all of us can remember what that meant to us and how important that was part of our childhood that was. Imagine if children can't go to day camp or sleepaway camp and what that's going to mean. So there's a lot to worry about.
I just want to add, at least to address partially the question of isolation of relatives on Pesach. To the extent that we might be isolated, that's one part of it. But to the extent that somebody else might be isolated in our family, I strongly urge us to, and even generally that we're isolated from perhaps friends and family, that we should proactively be calling our friends and family on a regular basis, not even Pesach, but certainly as it gets closer to Pesach, in order to strengthen the bonds of communication and lessen the feelings of loneliness.
By all means, yes, Rabbi. Thank you. Very important point.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, so I think we're just about at our
Okay.
stop point.
Again, I can speak for all that we're available to anybody who needs help. I am, to the extent that I can. I am being, when I first heard I'd be confined to the home, I thought, wow, I have all this free time to finally catch up on all the papers on my desk, and I've never been so busy. But I'll certainly be available. The trauma team is available, and please don't feel like you're imposing. To reach out to us, either again to the email copingwithcovid19@ohlfamily.org, or again, if to the extent that I can, you can reach out to me as well.
I also want to just thank Doron Simon for at least being the inspiration for this program tonight. Also to Rabbi Schiffman, and in particular to Yitzelman for helping to coordinate Dr. Blumenthal's presence with us. So thank you all, and look forward to, I guess people are clapping, but you can't hear it because everybody's muted.
Well, I look forward to getting together for happy occasions. Okay.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Just a note, tomorrow morning there'll be a virtual Shachris again at 7:30, 7:55. We have 10-minute Mesilas Yesharim. And please look out for an email tomorrow regarding Erev Shabbos, Mincha, and a special program before Shabbos.
More immediately, in 2 minutes, in this same room, is going to be our Parsha and Gemara shir. You don't even have to go to a different link. It is right here. I'll be watching who's leaving.
Okay, thank you all.
I'm watching them leave. So, how's everybody doing? You can unmute yourselves. Talk. Ita, I was thinking about doing something like that. I didn't have time to figure it out, but I was thinking the main shul. But the
I know
window-
I couldn't. Shlomo has a very nice picture of the main shul that I have to find somewhere. It's not easily findable on Google, or it's not on Google. But he sent it to me once. I keep thinking about it 3 seconds before we go. But
So how do you do it? What do
so
you press?
there's if you what are you on?
Zoom
Computer?
Yeah.
On a computer? On the bottom left, you have your kind of stop video with a little arrow. Does it?
Yeah.
And if you click the little arrow, does it say choose virtual background?
Got it.
There you go. This is the one I've been using for my work calls, but it tends to freak people out. So.
So wait, which one? I don't see what you're using. Oh, that one. You can add image. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so you can search whatever image you want and put it up there. I don't know if you saw Kiba Weisinger's students, they all found pictures of him on the internet and used that as their backgrounds for his class.
That's
Told my daughter to do that to her kids.
Hi, where do you see that on here?
go where it says stop video. There's a little arrow to the right of stop video.
Oh, got it.
Virtual background.
Thank you. I'm going to use it for my classes this week.
Jack, you can watch Teddy.
No, I think it's real.
Got to try that one. That's impressive.
What I'm really doing is
Mendy,
Is-
where are you
assembling Shlomo's bike.
calling in from? Oh, in the car? Wow.
Very, very nice. At least that's a fake picture of a toilet.
Mm-hmm.
My students have all types of interesting backgrounds that they put behind themselves. One of them got a picture of me standing in front of the Aron Kodesh on Purim, dressed up as Abraham Lincoln. So one class had all of their backgrounds with me as Abraham Lincoln.
I wonder from where they got that picture.
Everything's online these days, Laser.
It's all men.
Women are allowed. Women are allowed.
Yes.
I seem to be the only one here.
Oh, no, Miss Debbie
Oh.
B is here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. The women
I
just
don't
had
wanna
to
make-
cover their faces.
But
I got an
Just
appropriate
kidding.
image for sure. Teddy.
That's
Huh?
cool.
I like that.
You put it on?
We usually wait a minute or two to make usually running a few minutes late, so we can't start on time, even though I'm late.
Wait, Mandy's delivering the food.
Yeah.
I was going to say, everybody's getting their food.
So I have a question because I'm testing Zoom for my classroom.
Yeah.
So Rabbi Schiffman, I logged in thinking it was I know I missed the baking, but I guess it was the same code.
Yeah, we're using the same code for everything, basically.
So you can do that. You have the same code for all Kingsway events.
Yeah.
Now, are the events that you have done on
While
Zoom,
you
are they recorded or no?
This is while you.
I think most of them are. If not all of them. Zoom was having problems today, yesterday, with getting their recordings up, but they all should be recorded.
Okay.
How we're gonna get those recordings out, I'm not positive yet,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll figure it out.
I just had my beautiful assistant Dahlia help me for the last hour. She just stepped away.
Oh, wow.
The younger brain helps the older brain here.
Okay. I hear.
Thank you.
All right, should we start? What do you think?
Yeah, let me start.
I'm trying to download another picture here, but for some reason it's getting lost.
Itai, is that the Slobodka Yeshiva?
No, it's Volozhin.
I mean, the Volozhin Yeshiva.
Yeah.
All
Got a
right.
ride.
I'll play around tomorrow finding a better picture, but for now. Okay. I'm also going to share my camera, but can we do the intros? What do we do you have it, Rabbi?
Yes, yeah. Okay. The shir tonight is sponsored by Barbara Brightstein, Le'ilu Nishmas, 3 of her relatives, Zev Brightstein, Zev ben Avraham, alav hashalom, on the occasion of his 15th yahrzeit, as well as her cousin Chaim Yisrael Pinchas ben Shimshon, alav hashalom, as well as her grandfather Shlomo ben Yeshaya Lezer, alav hashalom. in the zchus of our learning and our connecting with one another, the neshamas should each and all have an aliyah.
Amen.
And
Amen. Okay, so can you all see my screen?
Rabbi,
Yes.
Dr. Pop asked to mention his father's name.
All right, Beth. Let's get it. It's in the
In the chat,
The shir chat.
in the Shurim chat. Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's Beth Meiri's father's second yard site tonight, and his name is Chuna Moshe ben Shlomo Halevi, and the neshama should have an aliyah.
Amen.
Okay, and one more question. I can't seem to find it right now. Do we know what the meeting ID is? Somebody's asking.
Yeah, 1 second.
Dan Nachmias put it in.
It's 310-526-098, which are the last numbers at the end of the Zoom website. You know, when you click on the Zoom call, it's the same last 9 numbers there. 310-526-098.
Okay, so let me reshare my screen. Okay, so this is it's not even a photocopy. This is a direct copy from Otzar Chachma, from a sefer called Yalkut Lekach Tov. We've quoted it in the past in various Chumash Shirim. I'm not going to ask you to put yourselves on mute unless you're going to be distracting, which hopefully you won't be, but I actually like participation. So if anybody has anything to say, feel free. I've been doing Zoom now with my students for a while, not just because of the virus, but beforehand I have a class that's totally virtual on Zoom. And my experience has shown that people talk less when you are muted because it actively requires you to overcome and press something in order to say something. So we usually have less self-control when we just blurt things out, but when I actually have to unmute myself, then I talk less, which is a problem when you want participation. So I actively ask you to participate if you want. But that being said, let's jump in. So we have what's a pretty fascinating discussion in the beginning of Parshas Pekudei. The Medrash says something that is sort of mind-blowing. And the Yalkut Lekach Tov quotes Rabbi Yosef Tzvi Salant from his Sefer Ber Yosef, where he even exaggerates the problem of how fascinating and crazy this medrash is, and teaches us a lesson that we can take away for our own lives. And the idea is as follows. So the pasuk starts off, the parsha starts off, it's called Pekudei, Vayakel Pekudei, because Eila Pekudei Mishkan Ha'edut. So these are it's the accounting, right? We're just in time for tax season, right? This is the accounting of everything that has been given to the Mishkan and how it was used. So the Medrash says as follows, and you could follow along here as I point, Eila Pekudei Mishkan, V'lama asai mahem cheshbon. So the Medrash asks a simple question: why are we doing this new accounting of everything that has gone into the Mishkan? HaKadosh Baruch Hu yisparach shmo ma'amino, shenemar lo ken avdi Moshe b'chol beisi nemanhu. So God gives his stamp of approval and trust on Moshe and says that he's the most trustworthy person out of anybody in the world. So why are we requiring Moshe to give an accounting? Why does Moshe want to do this accounting if God already says, I trust you? So rather, here's what happened, according to the Medrash. Moshe heard the jesters, the scoffers of the Jewish people, the peanut gallery, the background noise, the people in who were sitting in the back row. What were they saying? Shenam, nothing against the back row for those who sit in the back row, but metaphorical back row here. So he heard these scoffers saying, Shenamar vayakivo Moshe Allah vibitu acharei Moshe. The pasuk says that they looked after Moshe. As he passed by, they looked after him. They stared at him. They were analyzing him. So the Medrash delves in and digs, creates a narrative here. Umahayu omrim. What were they saying? Rabbi Yochanan Amar, this is what they were saying. Rabbi Chama Amar Hayu Omrim, Chame Kedal Divra da Amram, which is translated in the Hebrew here, Re'e Kama Shamin Savaro Va'arpel Shel Ben Amram. Mind blowing. Look how fat Moshe is, right? Moshe's passing by. They're looking at Moshe and they're saying, look how big his neck is. Look how much weight he's put on. The Chavero Amar Lo, and the scoffer's friend says back to me, I picture the two people from the Muppets, those two old guys. Right? So the guy,
Statler and Waldorf.
right? So the friend says back, Adam sheshalat amalechas hamishkan ena tamavake sheyashir. So what do you expect? He's been getting all the Mishkan money. He's had some extra money to buy. He was stocking up on the chickens at Kosher Palace. He was hoarding all of them. He has all the money. He can buy whatever he wants because he took it from the Mishkan. So when Moshe hears this, so not only were they saying it, they were saying it within earshot of Moshe. Kishashama Moshe kach amar lahem Moshe. So Moshe responds and says, "Chayechem nigmar Mishkan aten lachem cheshbon." When the Mishkan's done, I'm going to give you an accounting. I'm going to account for every single penny that was spent. Amar lahem bo v'nasu cheshbon, and that's why we have this whole parsha is Moshe, according to the Medrash, to defend himself from the scoffers of the generation who were accusing him of taking money and getting fat based on the extra money that he used from the Mishkan. So Rabbi Yosef Salant just takes what is already a mind-boggling idea and makes it even more so. And he basically says, stealing is a big deal. Stealing from the Mishkan is a huge deal. Right? It's gigantic. So he develops in the first paragraph how bad stealing is. Then in the second paragraph, he says, "Ve'inyan zechamor shebatayim begonav klei sharas mibeis hamikdash makom ve'ikra shas hashchina." This is where God's presence is. Shechilo b'zeh kvod Hashem biyoser. How terrible it is to steal from God's mishkan. Kilu af kan bebeis hamikdash ein kan chas v'shalom ayin or. It's like you're saying God doesn't see me. Right? I steal from a shul. God doesn't see me. I steal from the base of Mikdash. God doesn't see me. That's crazy. Lachein onsho shekinayim hamikanim kinas Hashem pogimbo kain inyan shel kinayim pogimbo. So he gets into a conversation about something that's not relevant to the exact point. But the point for now is how crazy would it be for Moshe to steal yet from the Beis HaMikdash, from the Mishkan, and still these scoffers are accusing him of this. So what he basically says is, what do you see? What's the real problem here? And he says that it's really not that crazy. As crazy as we think it is, once people start making jokes, once people start scoffing, there is no limit to where they can go. The accusations they can make can literally, if you take a step back, not make any sense. It would be a ridiculous thing. But once you start making fun, once you start poking holes, once you start trolling on Twitter, you say whatever comes into your mouth. You don't have the mute button. You don't have the self-control to stop what you're saying. Things just come out. So what the point to take away, and you could read the rest on your own, I'll post this later. The point and the takeaway is that we have to be very careful not to be too open in how we criticize and critique people, and how much we scoff and make fun and poke fun at decisions that leaders and people make. Not that anybody's beyond scrutiny. Everybody needs an accounting, and that's why Moshe does it. And Moshe doesn't say, I don't have to listen to you. Moshe wants to be clear in the fact that he is clean from all of this, and he's happy and more than willing to show the accounting. That's not the point. The point here, though, is how crazy of an accusation this was, because once you start scoffing, once you start poking fun, once you start, it's that mindset, it's that character trait, the lates, the joker, the person who can't take anything seriously can really say some pretty crazy and wacky things, and it's an important character trait to stay away from for ourselves. And it's important to be mindful of other people if they're doing this, to make sure that we don't get convinced and taken down with the trolling and the scoffing that might happen, especially in an age of social media. This is something that's pretty common. So we learned this from Moshe. We learned it from the scoffers. Hopefully we can all apply it to our lives. I hand it now over to Rabbi Toker so we can learn Megillah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Second here. Second. Just want to put something up on the screen, but thought it was, here, let's try it again. Okay, all right, coming up now. There we go. And okay. Rabbi Schiffman.
Want to send it to me? What is it?
Host disabled participant screen sharing.
I don't trust you.
Apparently.
I have to screen the what you're gonna post first.
All right.
We've had lots of scoffers in here.
Yes.
Take extreme measures. Do you, I don't know if I can change the setting for this.
I just sent it. I just sent it to you. All right.
To which email address?
myschiff@gmail.
Got it.
Okay. 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 All right. So we're going to start off with the Gemara. We'll use what Rabbi Schiffman put up on the screen in a moment.
I can share the Gemara too.
You can share the Gemara too if you want. But right. Okay. But okay. So we're on Daf Chaf Beis Amud Aleph. We're about 2/3 down the way of the page. And if you call and we pick it up where it says Zakal, it's right where it gets wide on the bottom of the page. We had a Mishnah, and our Mishnah is discussing the laws of aliyahs to the Torah, who gets what aliyah, when, how many, under what conditions. And the Mishnah said the following: Zahaklal, here's the rule. Kol sheyesh bo musaf. When do you have 4 aliyahs? So 3 aliyahs is during the week. 4 aliyahs would be on Chol HaMoed or Rosh Chodesh. 5 aliyahs would be on what would 5 aliyahs be? Anybody remember? 6 aliyahs Yom Kippur, 7 aliyahs.
Yantif.
5 aliyahs Yom Tif, 6 aliyahs Yom Kippur, 7 aliyahs Shabbos. So the Gemara now asks a question. Ibayalahu. The Chachamim had the following question in doubt. Tanis Tzibor. If you have a public fast day where you read in the afternoon, where you read Vayichal, you read the parsha of Vayichal for the fast day. So the question is, how many aliyahs do you have in that situation? Oh, there you go. Iboilu, Tanis Sibur B'Kamar Rish Chadushim. So how many aliyahs do you have? So the Gemara says, well, Rosh Chodesh v'Moed de'ika karban musaf. Perhaps you can resolve the question by looking at the statement of the Mishnah, which is that Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed have 4 aliyahs, and the reason that they have 4 aliyahs, ostensibly, is because there's a common denominator amongst them. The common denominator being that there's karban musaf, right? So, if that's the case, so what would you say? Do you bring a car? Do you have 4 aliyahs on? You have 4 aliyahs on a fast day? Yes or no? If the common denominator between Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed is that you have a karban musaf, which gives you an additional prayer. So, and that is what motivates having another aliyah, because apparently the day is reflected in this additional grandeur. So, so what would you say about fast day? Would you have an additional aliyah? Yes or no? Well, Jake, do we have a karban musaf on a fast day? Do we say musaf on a fast day? Anybody? Rabbi Shifman said to unmute yourselves. Why is nobody unmuted?
My father said.
Okay. I was talking. I guess you didn't hear me.
Yeah.
I know you don't say you don't have on a fast day you don't have musaf.
Okay, so if on a fast day you don't have musaf, then ostensibly
there's only 3 aliyahs.
Should be only 3 aliyahs. So it should be an open and shut case. And yet the Gemara has a suffix. So what's the suffix? Hacha deleka karban musaf on a tanis where there's no karban musaf, low. So I would say, like Jake said, there's no 4th aliyah. There are only 3 aliyahs, open and shut case. But there's another side to this question here. Oh, Dilma, perhaps. Hachanami, even on a fast day, you're going to have a 4th aliyah. Why would you possibly have a 4th aliyah on a fast day? Says the Gemara, because even though there's no karban musaf, which initiates an additional tefillah of the day, nevertheless, ika musaf tefillah, you still have an additional tefillah. What's the additional tefillah that you have on a fast day? So what is the additional tefillah that you have on a fast day? Anybody?
My father said Anenu.
Your father said Anenu. Okay, so take a look at the page that I gave Rabbi Shifman first to put up. And Rabbi Shifman, if you would use your powers as a host. Okay, and I'm going to take a look here. Take a look at the bottoms. Can I scroll? You have to scroll it. Scroll down, Rabbi Shifman, all the way to the bottom. Okay, there we go. So we're going to take a look at just bottom of the first page. So we're going to take a look at this machlokas, nice little machlokas rishonim over here regarding what is the extra tefillah on a fast day. So Rashi, Rashi suggests that the additional fast is anenu, as Mr. Aufrichtig said. Anenu hi tefillah hanemeres b'tanis tzibur be'emtza tefillah shmona esrei. And that tefillah of anenu, nikres b'gemara, the Gemara Tainus is called tefillah's tainus. So it is a tefillah, and therefore we have our extra tefillah. You have an extra tefillah, maybe it should generate having an extra aliyah, because the day has an extra quality to it reflected in this extra tefillah. The Kosva Tosfos, the Tosfos writes, "Shaminag hu shayichidim ein ov." So we're going to go off on a little put an open parentheses on this. So we have our first shita on the Rishonim. What is the extra tefillah? And the extra tefillah on a fast day that would generate a 4th aliyah would be anenu, which is a bracha in Shmona Esrei. So now open parentheses. Kasvu Tosfos sheminhag hu shayichidim ein omrim anenu ela b'tfilas hamincha. The minhag is that when an individual is davening Shmona Esrei, So an individual, i.e. somebody who's not a shliach tzibur, will only say anenu at tfilas mincha. Why doesn't, but the shliach tzibur says anenu at shachris already. So what's the difference? Why is it that a yachid, that a private citizen will only say anenu at mincha time and not at shachris? So the Gemara says, Tosfos say, Kishema yimtza shakran bitfilaso, because we're afraid that if a private citizen davens shachris and says anenu, and it says anenu, God answer our prayers on this fast day, but in fact by 11 o'clock you can't take the fast anymore and you break your fast, so then shakran, turns out when you were praying to God, you were retroactively purporting a lie, professing a falsehood. At the end of the day, you couldn't complete the fast for whatever reason. Even you were forced to eat as an ones. But a shliach tzibur says it on shachris. So, what would be the difference, in your opinion? What if a shliach tzibur gets up to the Yamud? I'm sorry, if a yachid daven shachris, and we say that a yachid shouldn't daven shachris, shouldn't say anenu shachris because he may break his fast, and then it'll turn out that he was a shakran. Why is a shliach tzibur any different? A shliach tzibur says anenu at shachris. In fact, he says as an own independent bracha. So can you come up with a distinction in your mind why a yachid will only say anenu by mincha because we're afraid he's going to break his fast, thereby being retroactively a liar? But a shliach tzibur, we don't care if he's lying. What do you think? Laser? Don't forget to unmute yourself. Anybody?
The davening of a shliach tzibur is not the same as a yachid.
Okay, what do you mean by that, Jake?
He's doing for him it's like chazarat hashatz. He's doing it for the purpose of he already prayed on his own. It's more of just I guess for people who are not capable of doing it, but it's not the same. It doesn't serve the same purpose as you daven on your b'yechidut.
Okay, good. So
if he does break his fast, it's not a sheker.
Okay, all right. So just clarify for that for me, you or anybody else. I think that your distinction is correct. I'm just trying to flesh out why that distinction makes a difference. Why is he not a shakran when he should he end up breaking his fast? Right. But a guy davening a private citizen is considered a shakran when he breaks his fast.
Because there's always enough people that he's covering. There's a whole group that is certainly going to be fasting. So
okay, so let's take what Mr. Aufrichtig said and combine it with what Jake said, and I think we have the whole answer, right? In other words, Jake is saying there's a difference in purpose here. When a private person is davening, a private person is davening, and so if a private person ends up eating on the fast day, so it turns out when he said anenu biyom tzom tani seinu, he's it's a little bit of a chutzpah. But when a shliach tzibur is davening, a shliach tzibur is functioning as a representative of the tzibur. And says Mr. Aufrichtig, what's the likelihood that you're not going to have some people in the tzibur, a significant minority in the tzibur that are fasting? I mean, it's highly unlikely that you're not going to have somebody. And therefore, when the shliach tzibur ends up breaking his fast at the end in the middle of the day, he's not retroactively a shakran vis-a-vis the tzibur, because the tzibur is yom tzom tani seinu. The tzibur is fasting, even if he personally is not. And so therefore, for his private tefillah, he doesn't say it, because he could turn out being a shakran. But as Jake said, for him acting as a shliach tzibur, that's a totally different purpose of his tefillah. And as representing the tzibur, as Mr. Aufrichtig said, the tzibur is continuing to have a fast day. And therefore, it wouldn't be considered a problem. And that's precisely what they say. Shliach tzibur, back into this little page over here on the screen. Shliach tzibur omer af b'shachas kidei lahazkir l'tzibur shayom yom tanis. The purpose of a shliach tzibur is to get up there and announce and remind everyone that this is a tanis and beseech Hashem. Because of our Torah, and the Torah Shulchan Aruch writes, she'ein bekach hashash sheyimtza shakran. There's no concern that the shliach tzibur is a shakran. Ki vadai sheyu lefachos ma'at me'at tzibur sheyisanu kol hatanos, because most certainly you're going to have some minority, at least, of the tzibur that is still fasting, and therefore his particular frailty or his particular need to eat on the fast day does not impinge on his representation for the tzibur, because the tzibur is still fasting. He's not considered a shakran, or the shliach tzibur, I should say, is not considered a shakran. Umevor b'gemara, shliach tzibur koveas tfilas anenu kibracha b'fnei atzma v'yomra ben gol Yisrael r'fa'enu. The shliach tzibur indeed says the bracha independently, not as stuck in anywhere else. When the person's davening his private Shmona Esrei, Anenu is stuck into Shomei Tefillah. And this, as Jake said, reflects the different purposes of these tefillos. The private person speaking on behalf of himself, the Shliach Tzibur speaking on behalf of the Tzibur. Okay, close parentheses. So now go back. We said, what is the extra tefillah? What is the extra tefillah on the Tainus that would be considered, that would warrant us having a fourth aliyah? So Rashi said it's anenu. Amnam, however, bepiskei rid. Rabbi Shifrin, please scroll up a little bit. Okay, or I should say maybe scroll down. Go to the next page. A little more, and stop. Okay, stop. So amnam bepiskei harid. Where'd you go? Go back a line. There we go. Amnam bepiskei harid kasav shedoche kulomar. Piskei harid has a problem with Rashi. We're talking about adding a tefillah, and if you add a tefillah, it sort of changes the quality of the day, or reflects a significant change in the quality of the day, and therefore you add an aliyah to reflect this added quality. You want to tell me that one tiny little bracha added into Shmona Esrei transforms the whole nature of the day? Docha kulomar. And that's hard to say. It doesn't make sense that adding a little one extra bracha in Shmona Esrei somehow reflects an entire transformation of the day. So rather, the Piskei Rid has a different view. Ella hatfila hayasera hi tfilas neila. The additional tefillah that we're talking about is neila. Shemispalalim. So somebody asked me a question.
We don't have tefillat neila on a regular fast day.
Jake says we don't have a tefillas neila on a regular fast day. Kimevuar b'mishnah tainis of Rashi divrei maskil neilas. I underlined it for you. Shemin hagam haya lehispalal tefillas neila b'chol tainis tzibor. In fact, at that time, the minhag was, in Ashkenaz apparently, to say Ne'ilah on every Tainas Tzibor. Kishem Shonim Ispalim B'Yom HaKippurim. Imagine how much the shuls would have to pay for Chazanim all year long to have a Ne'ilah on every, on Tainas Esther. That would be a pretty interesting thing. All right, so now the point of the matter is that you have that they had Ne'ilah. That's already a simon. That already reflects a transformation of the quality and the nature of the day. You have the Ne'ilah. We're not talking about a tiny little, says the Piskei, we're not talking about a little bracha. Yeah, you had a bracha. I'm not minimizing the bracha, but he is minimizing the bracha as a reflection of a transformative representation of the transformative nature of the day. So he says no, it means tfilas ne'ilah. That already means something. So apparently in those days they had ne'ilah. The position of the Ran, and he proves the fact. that in Bavel, when they declared a special fast day, they declared in the Ne'ilah. Okay, skip to the next paragraph where I have it underlined. Af shematzanu od tosefes tefillah b'mei hataynis shemispalalim b'tfilas hamida esrim v'arba brachos. Kasav haritva she'en l'farish hakavanah sagamar b'usaf tefillah l'brachos elu. Mivnei she'en mosifin osam b'chol hataynios elarak b'tanios achronos shemisanim ad tzibur kishelo yardu geshamim. There was a third possibility here. The third possibility is that if you look in the Mishnah, the Gemara, that on the Tanesim they added in additional brachas. So instead of having Shmona Esrei, you would have 24 brachas in the Shmona Esrei, and these additional brachas were there to for additional supplications. So the Ritva says, lest you think that might be the additional, this is like a middle ground here. Rashi said it's adding that one little tiny bracha of Anenu. The Piskei said no, and the Ran said no, it can't be that. It doesn't make sense that little bracha is reflective of a whole transformative nature. It says no, it means Tfilas Ne'ilah. But here you have a middle ground. You have 6 additional brachas that are added to Shemona Esrei. So maybe one bracha added to Shemona Esrei isn't such a big deal. But 6 brachas added to Shemona Esrei, maybe that does reflect a significant change in the nature of the day. And if that is the case, then maybe that would warrant a 4th aliyah in the Kriyas HaTorah. But the Ritva disposes of this idea. The Ritva says, when the Gemara says that Musaf Tefillah is what triggers an additional aliyah, no, it's not these 6 brachas. Because these 6 brachas are not added on every fast day. Ne'ilah might be added on every fast day, but these 6 brachas were not added on every fast day. Why? Oh, not why, but when were they added? They were added specifically on those additional Tanis Tziburs that were established, like when there was a drought or when there was some real terrible event that was hitting the community. So that's when. So because of the fact that it's, I guess it was not uniform, and it was only on those special fasts, which were not, held on a regular basis. He said that the Ritva believes that those 6 extra brachos cannot be the additional tfilas musaf that would warrant an additional aliyah in Kriyas HaTorah. Rabbi Shifman, just scroll down just a tiny bit more. Okay. In the brackets, amnam re'eh b'karbon. Okay, that's enough. Amnam re'eh b'karbon nisanel in the brackets. Sheper shemusaf tefillah hainu shemispalem esrei v'arba brachos. The Karbon Nisanel says that it seems that the musaf tefillah is those 6 brachos. The teretz lefiza at kushas harishonim shuvalel madua lochicho me'anshe maimin shebetainis and kormi hashlosha sharei anshe maimin enam mispalem esrei v'arba brachos. All right, actually, I don't want to get off into his teretz, but so we see that there are 3 basic positions in the Rishonim. And later Rishonim as to what this Musaf Tefillah is, and I think it's just and I thought it was interesting to bring these 3 opinions to give us a little bit of insight into the idea of Ne'ilah, which we only know from Yom Kippur, and even these 6 additional brachos. Okay, so now we can go back to our Gemara, Chaf Beis Amud Aleph. All right, Chaf Beis Amud Aleph. And the Gemara says, the following: Toshma. So we have 2 sides to this. We have 2 sides to our suffix here. Is Tainus Tzibur like Chol HaMoed and Rosh Chodesh that you do 4 aliyos, or no? Is it like a regular day, Monday and Thursday, that you only do 3 aliyos? So says the Gemara: Toshma, come and learn. If you look at our Mishnah stated very clearly on Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed you have 4 aliyahs. So if the Mishnah says on Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed you have 4 aliyahs, what's the implication? The implication is those are when you have 4 aliyahs and other days not. So there's no reason to believe that that Tanis Tzibur should have 4 aliyahs. This is a diuk. Habitanis Tzibur Gimel. The implication is that on a Tanis Tzibur, you would only have 3 aliyahs like any other Monday and Thursday. So that seems like a pretty good inference, a raya from a diuk. It's a raya from an inference. Gemara says, no, if you want to bring me rayas from inferences, I have another inference from you, the same Mishnah. Ema Reisha, say the Reisha. The Reisha, take a look at the Reisha. What does the Reisha say? B'sheni, b'chamishi, u'v'shabis, b'mincha, korin, gimel. When do you have 3 aliyahs? On Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos afternoon. So there you have it. Absolute clarity. This is when you have 3 aliyahs. What's the diuk? What's the inference here? The inference is Atanis Tzibur Arba, but when you have Atanis Tzibur, then it would be 4 aliyahs. So you have 2 statements of the Mishnah. The first statement of the Mishnah says with absolute clarity when you do 4 aliyahs, implying that other days that aren't categorized would be 3. Then you have another statement which says absolute clarity. These are the day that you do 4 aliyahs. The implication is other days that aren't categorized, you would do 3. So we have a diuk going in both directions. So which is the more compelling inference? Which is the more compelling proof? Does anybody want to take a vote? Or have an opinion? Are either of these more compelling than the other? They're both diukim. They're both inferences. So the Gemara says, well, let's try it from this perspective. Toshma. Durav ikle. So I skipped the line. Elameha leka lemishma mina. So since you have a whatchamacallit, you have a diuk going in one direction, you have a diuk going in another direction. So neither of them is going to be entirely compelling. So we're still left with our suffix. On a Tainus Tzibur, you have 4 aliyahs or you have 3 aliyahs. So the Gemara now tries to prove it from a Maisa Shahaya. Toshma. We're gonna prove it from the following Maisa. Rav Iklal Bavel B'Tanis Tzibur. Rav once happened to be going to Bavel on a fast day. Come Kara B'Sifra. He got up to read Kriyas Torah. He got an aliyah. Pasach Baruch Chosim Lo Baruch. So when he got up to say his aliyah, when he got up to read, so he opened with a bracha, but when he concluded, he didn't say a bracha. So what does that tell us? So nafal kule alma anpayu v'ravlo nafal. In addition, at the very same tefillah, the entire congregation did tefillas apayim by Tachanun, but Rav did not do tefillas apayim but from Tachanun. So we have 2 at Tachanun. So we have 2 things that are going on here. The second thing about Tachanun is not relevant to our discussion, but the first thing is. So let's go back here again. Rav got an aliyah. He made a bracha when he got up, but he didn't make a bracha when he sat down. So what's the raya here? Now you might remember that we said that in the olden days, how did they do aliyahs? How did they do brachas by aliyahs? There was Doron, you remember?
Just at the beginning and at the end.
Yeah, you had a bracha at the beginning.
And a bracha at the end.
And you had a bracha at the end. Okay, so the Gemara says the following. Michdi, Rav b'Yisrael kara. It says Rav was a Yisrael. Okay. So if Rav was a Yisrael, that means that he read the 3rd aliyah. So now, my taima chasam v'lo baruch. Why, if Rav was the 3rd and final Ole, so why did he read why didn't he say a bracha at the end?
He expected another guy. He expected a 4th aliyah.
Excellent, Jake. He expected a fourth aliyah. So it seems from this Maisa Shahaya, the fact that Rav didn't make a bracha in conclusion indicates that he was assuming there was a fourth aliyah coming. So there you have a raya from a Maisa Shahaya that on Tainis Tzibur you have four aliyahs. But the Gemara rejects this proof. And the Gemara says, lo Rav b'chahani kara. No, it is quite possible that Rav actually did not read as a Yisrael, but he read by Kohen. He was the Kohen aliyah. Even though he was a Yisrael, he read by the Kohen. The Harav Huna Kari B'chane, because we know that Rav Huna would read for the Kohen portion because as out of respect for his godless, they gave him the Kohen aliyah. So just like Rav Huna got the Kohen aliyah, so Kohen aliyah. I mean, in fact, would indicate that he got the first aliyah. So you have here a story about Rav that seems to indicate that there was a fourth aliyah, but at the end, maybe it doesn't indicate there was a fourth aliyah, because if Rav was reading the Kohen aliyah, the reason that he didn't that's the reason that he didn't conclude with the bracha, because he was the first aliyah of the day, not the third aliyah. All right. So, but the Gemara now says.
Sorry, Rabbi. Yeah. If Rav was the first aliyah, wouldn't he have said a bracha either way?
The first
bracha. If Rav was actually shlishi, you want to say?
No, if he's the first Kohen, he would have said the first bracha.
He would have said the bracha regardless.
He would have said the first bracha. The raya comes from the absence of the concluding bracha. And why is there an absence of a concluding bracha? Because if he was the third aliyah, the absence of the concluding bracha is because it wasn't the concluding aliyah, and therefore it's mashma that he was expecting a fourth aliyah. But if his aliyah was Kohen, then obviously he didn't do a concluding aliyah, because there are multiple aliyahs that are coming afterwards, right? So the Gemara says the following: Bishlam Rav Huna Kari b'chahane deha afilu Rav Ami v'Rav Asi dechahane chashivi dara di Yisrael. Says, all right, it's one thing that Rav Huna read for the Kohen, even though he wasn't a Kohen, because in Eretz Yisrael, even Rav Ami and Rav Asi, who were the preeminent Kohanim, mechav kaifile ala Rav Huna. In other words, the culture in Eretz Yisrael was that the Kohanim, and even the greatest of the Kohanim, meaning Rav Ami and Rav Asi, they were subservient to the position of Rav Huna. So it would make sense that Rav Huna were to be given the honor of the first aliyah, because the Kohanim who should get the first aliyah felt subservient to him. So it's good. But who's to say that that's the case by Rav in Bavel? Ela Rav hayika shmuel de chahana have udvar alay. But why? Who says that Rav would be given the first aliyah in Bavel? The fact of the matter is, Shmuel was a Kohen, and Shmuel was not subservient to Rav, right? In fact, we say Rav Tana Upaliki, right? Rav is, Rav was like super duper. So in Bavel, Rav was, and even though Rav was, was so extraordinary, Shmuel nevertheless argued against him and took precedence over. So it seems clear that these are not comparable cases, says the Gemara. So we're back to our issue. It cannot be that Rav had the Kohen Aliyah. If Rav could not have the Kohen Aliyah, that means Rav could only have Shlishi. If Rav could only have Shlishi, then why didn't he have a concluding bracha at the end of his Aliyah? Because he was assuming that there was going to be a fourth Aliyah. So we have a good raya from Ma'aser Rav that on a Tanis Tzibur, their taka is a fourth Aliyah. All right? So the Gemara says, not so fast. Shmuel nami mechav habekayaf le'Rav. In reality, Shmuel was in fact subordinate to Rav. The Rav hu da'avid le'kavod, and in fact it was Rav who very often gave kavod to Shmuel. V'chi avid le'befanav, and when did in fact did Rav give any special kavod to Shmuel? Shelo befanav. V'chi avid le'befanav. And when did he give him any special honor? Befanav, in front of him. Shelo befanav lo avid le. But when he wasn't in his presence, so then Rav did not give any special kavod to Shmuel. So it could very well be that Rav was the most highly respected guy around, and Shmuel was not present, and thus Rav could have the aliyah of Kohen. If Rav has the aliyah of Kohen, then we have no raya that on a Tanis Tzibur you can have a fourth aliyah. Right? Did everybody get that? That was like the whole thing of whether you have a fourth aliyah from the story of Rav is dependent upon Rav, the story of Rav being Rav having the Kohen aliyah or Rav having Shlishi. If Rav has Shlishi, then the fact that he doesn't have a concluding bracha indicates that he assumes that there's going to be a fourth aliyah. But if we can construct a case that Rav might have gotten Kohen, then it takes away the whole proof. So that's like the back and forth over here. So the Gemara says, so he says, you know what? What's more reasonable? Is it more reasonable that Rav had Kohen, or is it more reasonable that Rav had Shlishi? If it's more reasonable that Rav had Kohen, then there's no raya that you have a fourth aliyah on Tanis Tzibur. If it's more reasonable to say that Rav had Shlishi, then the fact that Rav didn't do a concluding bracha would in fact indicate that he was waiting for a fourth aliyah. Says the Gemara, it is really more reasonable to say that Rav did read Kohen. Because if you want to say that, if you want to offer the suggestion that Rav's aliyah was Shlishi, lefaneha my time of barich. So then why did he make the opening bracha? In other words, the fact that Rav didn't make a concluding bracha could very well be that he was Shlishi, could be that he was Sheni, could be that he was Kohen. But why on earth would Rav make an opening bracha if he was any aliyah other than Kohen? So it must be that Rav was Kohen. If Rav is Kohen, then the fact that he lacked a concluding bracha has no bearing on whether he was expecting a fourth aliyah or not. The Gemara says, "Lefanei my time baruch." So why did he do it? So the Gemara has an answer. The Gemara says, "La'achar takana." It was after the takana. In other words, we were assuming that this whole story happened when they only did one bracha at the beginning and one bracha at the end. But it could very well be that it was after the takana that everybody makes a bracha before he begins to read. And therefore, it's possible that the third Ola made a bracha at the beginning, and he didn't make a bracha at the end because he was assuming there was going to be a fourth aliyah. Says the Gemara.
Rabbi, question.
If that's the case, yeah.
The takana, you said, the takana means that they got a bracha before the aliyah. Didn't they also have a bracha after the aliyah?
Yeah. So
it's not going to be proof for anything. If that's after the takana, means that you went to nowadays. We make two brachos.
Yeah, so the takana, right? So let's read the next line in the Gemara. So the Gemara says, so if it's true that this took place after the takana, so then he should have also recited a bracha afterwards. Jake is asking exactly the Gemara's question, right? So the Gemara says, no, Shani, Heicha Diasiv Rav Demayol Aile. No, it's different because where Rav was present, because Shani Heicha Diasiv Rav, it's where Rav was, the takana was different. Demayol Aile, because the concern was that people would come late, and Meifak Lo Nafke, and people would not leave early, and therefore there was no reason for anybody to do a concluding bracha except for the last aliyah. In other words, what the Gemara is saying is that there was like before the takana and then after the takana, there were two versions of the takana. What was the whole takana? The whole takana was, we're concerned that people are going to come in and they're going to think that you don't do a bracha at the beginning. Or they're going to come in and they're going to think you don't do a bracha at the end. So therefore, we make sure that everybody does a bracha at the beginning of each aliyah, and everybody does a bracha at the end of each aliyah, right? So the Gemara says, yeah, but where Rav was, they were only concerned about people coming late and not realizing you make a bracha at the beginning. They weren't worried about people leaving early and thus not knowing that there's a bracha at the end. And therefore, in his area, the takana was only to make an opening bracha before each aliyah, but not a closing bracha before each aliyah. All right. All right. Let's just do one more tashma. And we'll conclude. Says the Gemara, tashma. We're going to try one more proof here. Again, our opening question was: is Tainus Tzibur like every other Monday and Thursday, and you do 3 aliyahs, or is Tainus Tzibur like Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed, and you have 4 aliyahs? So first we tried to answer it from a diuk, from an inference in how the Mishnah is worded. Then we tried to answer it based on a Maisa Rav, a story that happened with Rav. And when we went back and forth to try to figure out if that story was was necessarily compelling. So now we come to one more proof. Toshma. Zeh haklal. The Brisa says the following: Kol sheyesh ba bitul malacha la'am. Wherever there is bitul malacha, or people don't go to work, then Kigon Tanis Tzibur v'Tishabav Korin Gimel. In other words, when do you have 3 aliyahs? The rule is you have 3 aliyahs when we're concerned about people missing their job, and so we want to make sure that we keep it to a minimum. And so we have 3 aliyahs so people can go to work. What are examples of days that we don't keep people late in shul because they have to go to work? The examples are Tanis Tzibur and Tisha B'Av, public fast days, and Tisha B'Av. Korin Gimel, you read 3 aliyahs. She'ein bo bitul malacha la'am. But when we're not concerned about people missing work, namely, what's an example of people not being concerned of people missing work? Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed. Because on Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed, people are more relaxed, and people aren't necessarily going to work the same way that they go on regular days. So Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed, Korin Daled, you have 4 aliyahs. So this brisa seems to be a perfect proof that on Tainus Tzibur you read 3 aliyahs like every Monday and Thursday, because at Tainus Tzibur people are going to work, and we don't want them to lose out on work. So we keep it to a minimum and do 3 aliyahs only. So all the proofs that we read tonight, the Gemara says Shma Mina. Shma Mina. This last one is an indisputable, incontrovertible proof. Tanis Tzibur is not like Rosh Chodesh. Tanis Tzibur is not like Chol HaMoed in the sense that you only do 3 aliyahs on Tanis Tzibur. Tanis Tzibur is like Monday and Thursday, 3 aliyahs and 3 aliyahs only. And I think with that we will pause. Okay, Be'ezras Hashem, we will Mirtz Hashem continue next week. Same, they used to say in the olden days, same bat time, same bat channel. And tomorrow morning, we will have communal davening at 7:30, 7:55, 10 minutes. Mesilas Yesharim. And please look out for an email tomorrow regarding any special mincha and a special pre-Shabbos event. Okay, shkoyach everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for those of you who joined for the first time tonight, have a good Shabbos. And for those of you who joined for the first time tonight, please feel free and welcome to come back next Thursday night and any Thursday night.
Eat shalom, eat kugel, drink booze. Enjoy yourself.
Nate, go ahead. Go ahead, Nate.
I said eat shalom, eat kugel, make brachas, sing zmiras. It's Shabbos and enjoy it.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Nate, who said that? You or your father?
Everybody.
Take care of them. Don't worry. Wait, you want to come say hello.
Good night.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night,
Good night, Mr. Alfrechtig.
Okay, wonderful share. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.